There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
Well, thanks for joining me on the Leadership Crucible podcast. American writer Kurt Vonnegut wrote, "I can think of no more stirring symbol of man's humanity to man than a fire truck." Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Jim Johnson, the Executive Vice President of Oshkosh Corporation and President, Fire and Emergency. He is responsible for the overall operation of Oshkosh's Fire and Emergency business segment, consisting of the Pierce, Oshkosh, Airport Products, and Frontline brands. And by the way, Pierce supplies over 50% of the fire apparatus used in the U.S. Jim joined Oshkosh Corporation in 2007 after holding positions in sales and marketing in the recreational vehicle industry. He's an attorney who spent several years practicing law in Indianapolis, Indiana, focusing on commercial litigation. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in business from Indiana University, Bloomington, and a Juris Doctorate degree from Indiana University in Indianapolis. Well, Jim, welcome to the Leadership Crucible podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today, and thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. I'm honored for the invitation, and I think your mission is an important one, so I'm happy to participate.
Well, thank you. Well, let's just start off today because I know you've had a really extraordinary career to date, but I know you probably had some times during your life when you faced some challenges and adversity that actually changed the path that you have chosen. And so I just wondered if you could share a couple of those with our audience today.
When I think of career specifically, that's an easy one. And I go back to when I graduated from college, like even a lot of kids today, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really had no idea. I wasn't going to save the world. It wasn't get rich. It just, I didn't know. I was a little driftless. But I ended up going to law school for really a lack of another idea. And I got into law school. It's a 3-year program. And after the second year, I thought, oh, this isn't for me. I don't like it. But, I'm not a quitter. I'm in it to win it. I'd taken out student loans to pay for it, even though I quit law school for a semester. That's another story between me and my parents. But went back, finished, got my law degree, and started practicing law. And I just didn't like it. But I stuck with it. I was newly married. We had our first child. What else do you do? I figured that was my lot in life. And then as I progressed, and I got to that point where you typically become a partner in a law firm, which is usually year 6 or 7, I just thought, I'm not signing up for this for the rest of my life. And but I can fix that. My high school basketball coach used to say, you are where you are because that's exactly where you want to be, which to me is my all-time favorite quote. And I realized I am where I am because apparently I want to be here. But if I don't want to be here, then I got to fix it. So what I did was long story short, I took a job as an in-house attorney with an RV, a publicly traded RV company in northern Indiana called Coachman Industries, with the full intention of working my way out of that legal department into sales or management or something. And that is what I did. And I've never looked back. But, I had to be bold enough and confident enough that I could make that change. But most importantly, I think for anybody today, especially young folks, you got to like what you do. Yeah. You can't chase things for money, because my legal peers would say, well, why would you go do what you're doing? You're going to make less money. Well, that's not why I'm doing it. It's not about the money. It's about enjoying your day and believing in what you do. So that was sort of a seminal moment for me in my career. And it worked out.
No, it really has. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, you've got to have a passion for going to work every day. It's where we live a big part of our lives. And so if you're going to work every day and you're just dreading having to go into the office or into the field or whatever your chosen profession is, and it just makes your life miserable. So I think you're exactly right.
Never look back.
How was that decision, with your family? I mean, to come to that.
My wife, incredibly supportive. She never flinched. She's like, I get it. And I see you go to work each day. I know you don't like what you're doing and you bring that home with you. So
Yeah.
I'm supportive.
Yeah.
It was that was the easy part.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife's the same way. There had been times when, we're going to make a move to move the family across country to take another job or something like that. And, you always, question your sanity and do I really have it in me to take on that responsibility? And that they're always there to help us kind of be a sounding board for us. So I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, share a little bit about your story about how you got to Pierce Manufacturing.
So I worked with this RV company, Coachman Industries. I'll make this very short, but bottom line is one of the attorneys, the in-house attorneys at Coachman Industries, had left and come to Oshkosh Corporation, who's our parent company. And he called me one day, this was a few years after he left, and said, hey, there's a role up here in Wisconsin that I think you'd like. He knew that my wife, Tammy, was from Wisconsin, so she always wanted to get back to the motherland, as she said. And this was in 2007, right before the Great Recession. RVs and boats are always a leading indicator, so I could already see that RV industry going down and sliding in 2007, and I just thought, I don't really need to watch this slide down into the oblivion, and it's just time to make a change. So I ended up taking a job here as what was called the Director of Dealer Development for Pierce, and then became the VP of Sales in 2009, and then or 2008, and then the President of Pierce in 2010.
So tell the audience a little bit about Pierce. So you manufacture fire apparatus. And as I indicated in my opening, I think 50%, you have over 50% of the U.S. market, but you have a workforce of how many people? I know I've been through your plant a couple of times, and they are definitely craftsmen throughout your operation. So just share a little bit about that.
It's amazing to think that we are the world's largest fire truck manufacturer based here in Northeast Wisconsin. So we make your typical fire trucks that you see in your municipalities and cities and towns, plus we make the big airport fire trucks. And those are produced here at a number of plants here in Northeast Wisconsin. Then we also have 2 facilities in Florida. Here in North America, our core products, the typical, the aerial or the big pumper truck that you see in your community, we do have about 50% of that market. Pierce itself is 109 years old. Let's see, we started in 1913. So we're 109 years old. Pierce started making utility bodies here in Appleton, Wisconsin on old Fords, and then it just evolved over the years and into fire apparatus and fire truck manufacturing, and it's just grown from there. And I've been blessed that I'm really just caring for a wonderful culture that existed before I got here.
Yeah.
So which is really the core to Pierce's success. What else did you ask me? Oh, we have about 3,300 employees in the Pierce or Fire organization as part of Oshkosh Corporation.
That's
and I should
a
say
lot.
Again, we are owned by Oshkosh Corporation, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Oshkosh bought Pierce in the mid 90s before I came here in 2007. I would argue it could be the best thing that happened to Pierce because it's given us access to capital to reinvest in the business, access to technology, and Oshkosh's ownership has allowed us to invest in the technology to get us to the market share and our position in the marketplace that we're in today.
Well, and Oshkosh is known for developing state-of-the-art technology, so I would imagine there's some trickle down to what we're seeing in fire apparatus today.
Just a bit, yes.
So, a lot's changed over the last, 30, 36 months with the pandemic. And as we've come out of this, out of the pandemic, and we're getting back to some level of normalcy, what's changed for the workforce?
Well, a lot. What's changed, at least in manufacturing, is our people are used to having their parts on the floor, on time, presented line side to manufacturer, assemble the truck. Supply chain is a huge challenge, and so it's created inefficiencies for us. The other big thing that's changed is about 35 years ago, Pierce really hit its stride in the fire market and really started to grow, had some big orders, and did a massive recruitment and hiring here in Northeast Wisconsin. That was 35 years ago, so most of those people are retiring now, or beginning to retire, or have in the last few years. So we're also seeing a big generational shift in our workforce from those tenured folks who stay with the company for 35 or 40 years. We've even celebrated some 50-year anniversaries here within our segment in the last 5 years. It's astounding. By the way, a funny aside, one of the gentlemen who celebrated his 50th anniversary and then he retired, I asked him, "So what do you do next?" And his answer was, "I'm getting married." I always thought that was funny. Now we have a lot of young folks joining our organization. And I'll tell you, Randy, I don't subscribe to this theory that the millennials are different. They have a different viewpoint, but we have an incredible amount of talented, hardworking, persistent, gritty millennials working in our business today. Then I think will carry that Pierce legacy forward and take us to new heights.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the new generation, Gen Z, that is coming in I think they have a different viewpoint on society than some of the other generations, but I think they're much more balanced group, and they're technologically very, very savvy, and I think they're going to help drive the innovation that many corporations like yourself are going to see over the next 20 years. So it's exciting. I think they're going to bring a really fresh perspective to organizations as a whole.
I do too. We're already seeing it especially with the technology that we're adding to our trucks.
Yeah.
So we need them.
So, as far as as the workforce has come back, have you seen their needs change from what it was pre-pandemic to post-pandemic?
Well, our need collectively is just training in the trade skills. High schools don't teach that anymore. I remember when I was in high school in Palatine, Illinois from 1978 to 1982, I took woodworking, I took metalwork, I took a plastics class. It was part of the curriculum. You don't have that anymore. And so it makes it a little tougher for kids coming in today, and it's also tougher for us to recruit. We've gone to the high schools and encouraged them that, you've got to continue to promote the trades. And there's people that retire from Pierce, as I just mentioned, with 35, 40, 45, 50 years. And, they'll constantly say, "I'm thankful to Pierce. I have no mortgage. I paid for my kids to go to school. I have no debt. I'm retiring." And, you can do that with a trade skill, whether it's a plumber, an electrician, a painter, all people that we employ. But our educational system isn't focused on that today. And that's a challenge not only for the students, but also the employers as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's unfortunate that we've lost that focus. There's always been a balance, I think, when we were going to school, that you had the option to go to college, but they also taught you some basic skill sets so that you could at least fix things around your home. And a lot of times that enticed you to go down that path. And so, I totally agree. I think we've been way too focused on, if you just get 4 years of education, you'll be good to go. And we've lost a whole generation almost of skilled craftsmen.
We have. Now, necessity being the mother of invention, as they say, I think it'll come back around with the supply chain challenges. A lot of manufacturers and companies nearshoring their supply chain or bringing goods back that they had outsourced overseas over the years. I think long term, a decade or so down the road, we'll need more. There'll be an even greater demand for folks in the trades, but the educational system is going to have to catch up. We had representatives from the U.S. Department of Labor here about a month ago, and they see the same thing. They're reaching out to high schools and junior highs to promote the trades. It has to happen.
Do you see companies like yourself creating pathways, educational pathways from high school right into Pierce?
We do. We're actually working with our local technical school, technical college here in Northeast Wisconsin, reaching out to the one at near our plants in Florida and others actually in the Midwest to develop co-curriculum, so to speak, where students go into the tech college from high school and they go into a Pierce or an Oshkosh designated program where they get credits for working here while they're also doing their studies. Similar really to, the airlines now are starting their own flight training programs. A similar philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, really important, I think, that we start to train the next generation and not wait for the school systems to do it by themselves. I think we have to interject the needs of our professions into that system.
Private enterprise, corporate America, whatever you want to call it, will eventually figure out a way to fill in the gap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to have to, or we'll be out of business, right?
Right.
Teddy Roosevelt once said that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And we've talked previously about, as we came out of the pandemic, how you're supporting your workers differently than you were pre-pandemic. And could you share just a little bit about how that changed, what's changed, and how are you dealing with your employees a little bit differently than when you were pre-pandemic?
Well, I think my answer is going to be interesting to you because really not that much because, I mentioned the culture here in our organization, and it's always been a culture of caring and teamwork and serving each other. That hasn't changed, and we really think that culture is what has carried us not only through COVID, but is carrying us through the supply chain challenges we're facing today. I didn't start that culture. It's really a product of a gentleman named Doug Ogilvie, who owned Pierce for a number of years before Oshkosh bought Pierce. We've just carried his legacy along. So we haven't, we have not had to pivot or make significant changes. Now, with 3,300 team members, we probably have some that aren't happy about something, and that's just the nature of it. But
yeah.
What we've really tried to do is maintain that culture, those touch points with our people, which was really tough during COVID. And stick with what's worked rather than try to make a change, because that was a big differentiator for us in our community was our culture, and people enjoyed working here, and they still do.
Yeah. So did you put any additional support mechanisms in for people since they were somewhat more separated than they were previously? And
we didn't. So if I go back to COVID, we didn't take a hard line one way or another. Mm-hmm. Because we know a lot of people want to come to work, so we didn't tell them you couldn't. But a number of folks had childcare issues and other problems because of COVID, and we were certainly flexible there. So during COVID, we didn't have to make a lot of changes. And if you think about 2/3 of our workforce are working on the floor, assembling and fabricating fire trucks every day, they can't work from home. Yeah. And I think there was just a spirit here within our organization. Well, if my peers are there, I'm going to be there, and we're going to figure out a way to make it work. So we didn't have to make a lot of accommodations during COVID. In today's society, with the younger worker and the more technologically advanced that they are, there is some demand to have more work flexibility, whether you're here or at home. And we'll accommodate people, obviously, as long as they get their job done. I mean, we have a strong, positive servant leader supportive culture here, but at the end of the day, accountability has to be the number one factor, and folks have to be accountable for their work output. So historically, we would look at you have to be here in the office. You don't have to, but you still have to get your work done.
Yeah. So just for the audience, because they're probably wondering, how do you build a fire truck? And having walked through the plant, it's fascinating. And so why don't you just give them a little overview of how that works, putting together a massive piece of equipment like that.
So, right now our lead times are almost 2 years. So we have a very strong, healthy backlog. But a truck is, let's call it online for about 6 weeks, from the time we begin cutting metal for the frame until the time we deliver it to our customer on what we call our blue floor. It's just a giant room with the floors painted blue. So that's why it's called the blue floor. It's only about 6 weeks. So most of that time if you think about designing a house, is working with our engineers, working with fire departments to design the truck, because every truck, we call it, it's like a snowflake. They're highly customized. They're all different, and they may not look different to you as they're rolling past your house or in your community, but they are. So here in our area, Appleton, Wisconsin has different trucks than Neenah, Wisconsin, who has different trucks than Madison, who has different trucks than Milwaukee, who is et cetera, et cetera. So a great deal of time is spent in the design of the trucks. But once that design is locked in, we fabricate everything. We like to say we're sole source. We fabricate the frame rails. We fabricate the cab. We fabricate the body. Now, obviously, we buy the engine, the transmission, the tires, the lights in the seats, and the pump. But we fabricate those key components at a couple of facilities. We fabricate the ladder, and then all those components are shipped here to our main assembly plant in Appleton, where the truck is assembled, and it's done by hand. And I think the biggest shock for people when they come into our assembly plant is if they've toured an automotive facility or any high output common component, high output plant, they expect to see a lot of mechanization and moving assembly lines. That's not what it is. These trucks are assembled by hand and pushed down the line at certain tack times by hand. I think that's the biggest shock for people, and just the complexity that we manage on a daily basis. I'm so proud of what we do, and I will admit, I'm not so sure how we get it done on any given day, considering the amount of options, the amount of complexity, and the amount of demands on our folks.
Yeah, no, it's a piece of fire equipment is it's almost as complex as sending a rocket into space. I mean, there are just thousands of pieces that come together to make that work. And from a fire perspective, somebody that's purchased many of your pieces of equipment, and I had firefighters in the field use them. It's a critical piece of equipment. I mean, it's got to work every time, and so durability, reliability is absolutely critical. If you're inside of a house and your pump malfunctions and the house is on fire, that's not a good day. And so the reliability's got to be 100%.
Reliability and the support for that vehicle when it goes into service. And a big part of our success is our distribution or our dealer network, who invests heavily in service centers and stocking the appropriate parts. I mean, these are big, heavy trucks that break. No matter who manufactures it, it's going to break.
Yep.
And, one of the things that we're very proud of is our ability to keep trucks in service. And if you think about literally the millions of components that have been on our trucks over the years, and we have to find a way to stock those components to make sure that they're available to keep trucks that are in the field in service. That's the other key component to our success.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really critical point that people often don't think about on for their hometown fire and emergency services, that you only have so many pieces of equipment. And so the reliability of those units to be placed in service at any time is critical when you're running a fire department. And so, downtime is your worst enemy, and especially in smaller organizations that don't have a real depth of apparatus, and so it's critical. So that's a really good point. You mentioned about the supply chain issue, which you've been dealing with and still are dealing with, but what have you done to address those issues that you're having right now, number one? And then secondly, how are you planning on doing some changes down the road so that you don't face the same issue again if we run into some other event?
Yeah, that's the billion-dollar question right now, really, in manufacturing for everybody. Some of the changes we made, I'll say a trade secret I won't convey, but the supply chain it's a huge challenge, and when you don't know what parts are going to show up on your dock every day, that makes planning very difficult. We know, through a crisis, you learn who your friends really are. So one thing we're doing is those suppliers that have been good to us, that have over-communicated, that have taken care of us, even in the face of the adversity that they're dealing with every day, we're going to remember that and strengthen our partnership with those suppliers. But I firmly believe that what we're going through is actually a good thing. And this is going to make us a better business coming out of the supply chain crisis than what we were going into it. Because like anything, you take standardized processes for granted. We've always done things a certain way and you forget why you've done them. So this has forced us to literally look at every single way that we do business. And it's revealed some things that we were doing that we feel were time wasters or were really, frankly, kind of stupid. Why do we keep doing that? So because of these supply chain challenges, we're pivoting, we're changing the way we're doing business to become more efficient when we get out of this. I think I used the word nearshoring earlier. You'll hear this from a lot of manufacturers. So the supply chain that was overseas has struggled because of logistics. And in some countries like China, they still have these COVID lockdowns. You can't get parts. Now, historically for us, we bought very little directly from China, very, very little. But we have tier 2 suppliers. So if we buy component A from let's just say an Illinois-based supplier, they might be getting their subcomponents from some of these countries. So, that can slow us down. So as we look ahead, we are going to be more focused not only on our tier 1 suppliers, but our tier 2 suppliers as well. Tier 2 being the suppliers who supply our main suppliers. So that's going to be a bit of a change in our strategy going forward. But again, I like to look at this as an opportunity and not a crisis, so that we keep our folks positive and motivated and know that we're going to come out of this better than what we went into it.
Yeah. Are you in your conversations with your suppliers? Are they going through the same drill?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's everywhere. And the headlines are all about the chips that run all the phones and the screens and all that in the truck. That's a part of it, but it's not just chips. It's powertrain components, or axles, wire harnesses, springs, all of those things. And it's for a myriad of reasons. They can't get components, or they're having labor challenges or whatever. And it's not their fault. Everybody's trying the best they can. But we've had to do some redesign of certain components on the fly. If we don't think we're going to get a certain quantity of a particular component for the next 60 days, well, we're not going to ship trucks for the next 60 days. So we rapidly turn our engineers and get them spun up on a project to, requote, resource, recertify, retest, another component. But these are life-saving vehicles, and we're just not going to switch flippantly from one component to the other unless it's fully vetted and tested.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, if this has helped the United States kind of reconfigure, where our supply chain does come from. Hopefully, we see more of it move back, at least closer to the U.S.
Oh yeah, I think we will.
So, what advice would you give to people that are in leadership roles today?
Be humble and listen. And I believe that the solution to every challenge we have in our organization today, that answer is somewhere within our organization in somebody's head. Mm-hmm. We got to be humble enough to ask and humble enough to listen. And there is no way that I can solve what's going on here, or any of our particular leaders can solve it. We really got to be humble and listen and be open-minded.
Yeah.
And we're embracing that as an organization. We always have, but we're embracing it more so than ever. And it's amazing where solutions come from, and some of them are right in front of your face.
Yeah. Well, and the people that are closest to the work probably have the best answers.
They absolutely are.
So what advice would you give to the next generation in respect to making a difference in their own life journey?
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, pursue something that you like, and it's a journey. I know we interview some young recent college grads. I have two myself, and it's a challenge, I think, for a lot of kids today to figure out what they want to do. And I always tell them it's okay. I was a little shiftless too. I really didn't know what I wanted. I didn't go to law school. I wasn't altruistic. I wasn't trying to save the world. I just didn't know what to do. So for young folks today, it's okay to go on a journey to figure out what you want to do, but ultimately be a servant leader. And, that's the other thing in terms of leadership. You can be a leader in your community, in your family, in your church, in your social setting today, regardless of your time at an organization, your tenure, your talent, it doesn't matter. But if you come to your organization every day and you seek to serve the people that you work with and spend time with, what can I do to help you today? What can I do to advance the ball? What can I do to support the organization? Instead of what are you going to do to help me, or what's the organization going to do to help me?
Yep.
You'll get noticed and you'll get recognized. So again, be humble, be a servant to others. And there's an old phrase, you've probably heard it, Randy. I was taught this long ago: readers are leaders. Not only associate with people that are going where you want to go, but spend the time reading, and not in this silly little thing, this little phone, but books, autobiographies and autobiographies about people who have been successful, however you define success. Spend time reading, spend quiet time doing that and studying those that have come before you. I think it will pay huge dividends for you later in life.
You really do have to take the time to research and read and really find out today what's going on. But also, it's a real avenue into, I think, the soul, if you will, of leaders that have went before us and some of the things that they have faced. And there are lessons that can be learned from what they went through, and so that we can take and make our journey just a little bit easier.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, what would you like to leave today that may help someone become a better person or a better leader as they, create their own path and create their own journey for the future?
Well, I've talked already. I've raised humility, which I think is the number one quality that makes somebody successful in our organization. Servant leadership. If you don't know what that means, Google it. There's plenty of examples or stories out there. But on a personal journey, and I already shared this quote, but my high school basketball coach used to, tell us, you are where you are because that's exactly where you want to be. It didn't register with me till about 15 years after I left high school. I'm like, oh, now, or 10 years. Now I know what he means. And, the point of all that is take control and be gritty, be determined. There's a great book written by I think a Stanford professor named Angela Duckworth, called Grit. And we made that required reading for our leadership team here. One of my personal favorite quotes, it's long, but the short version from Calvin Coolidge is, the world is full of educated derelicts. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb, but persistence and persistence alone is omnipotent. So just because you're educated, just because you feel like you have great ideas, it doesn't really matter. It's the persistence and the determination and the fortitude, the intestinal fortitude to overcome obstacles is what's going to make you successful, however you define success. And success, unfortunately, our society is defines success as money. It's not. To me, success is being happy in what you do, feeling satisfied, serving other people, and feeling that just sense of well-being at the end of the day. All the other stuff works its way out. I got to tell you, when I came here, I didn't think I'd be the president of Pierce. I mean, you asked me a little bit about the time frame. I came here at the end of 2007. I became the VP of sales, I think, in 2008 or 2009. I've forgotten. And one day they came to me and said, "You're the president in 2010." That wasn't on my radar. That wasn't my intention when I came here. But looking back in the roles I had, I was persistent. I was gritty. I came to work trying to serve other people, and folks noticed. And that's the end. If you have the end in mind, that's great. People say that. But if you just focus on being the absolute best person you can be every day, working hard to serve others, busting your tail, so to speak, being persistent, gritty, determined, everything else works out.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think that there's
there. It's old-fashioned advice.
Yeah, well, sometimes that old-fashioned advice is the best. But I think there's one other element in there, and that's you have to be accountable to you. You have to be accountable. You have to take responsibility for yourself and the actions, your own actions, and no, it's the path to success, whatever that path looks like for you, has to be lined with accountability. Because if you're not accountable for your own actions and what you put into it, it's not going to happen.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we're a business. We're a publicly traded company. Accountability matters.
Yeah.
And fire service, accountability matters. You think about a pilot. Accountability matters. In so many walks of life, you have to hold yourself and candidly your peers accountable in an organization.
Yep, which is problematic for some to do.
So, it has been,
but I mean, it's really an important element of I think being a good person and a good leader.
And sometimes that's hard as a leader. You see somebody trying, and we embrace. We call it fail forward.
Mm-hmm.
We embrace that here, and we tell people, oh, it's okay. We tried, we failed, we learned, we move forward. But if you see folks not learning from that, you see folks continuing to do the same thing despite the feedback they're getting, then sometimes you have to make a difficult decision, an accountability decision, and find a different place for them.
Yeah, no, and those are always tough decisions. But you're right. I mean, ultimately, it relies on the individual themselves to take that feedback and make it better. And most do, but some don't, unfortunately. So you have to deal with that appropriately. But well, Jim, thanks so much for your insight today, and not only thank you for leading a great company, but for all your employees. I know the Fire and Emergency Services is indebted to what your people do each and every day, and making fire equipment that is reliable and actually helps save the lives of firefighters and people throughout the U.S. and throughout the world. So we appreciate what you do each and every day, and keeping our emergency service personnel safe in what they do every day. And again, I've been to your plant several times and met with a lot of your folks, and I'm just extremely excited about what your future holds, because I think you've built a great culture, or continue to build a great culture, and you've got a great workforce, and we appreciate all that you do.
Thanks so much. Just honored and humbled to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.